What can we learn when we reflect on the teachings of St Nicodemus the Hagiorite regarding slander? In particular, should Christians avoid telling jokes, fables, jesting, laughing, and letting loose our emotions? Please, we welcome interesting questions in the comments. Let us learn and reflect together. At the end of our talk, we will discuss the sources used for this video. Please feel free to follow along in the PowerPoint script we uploaded to SlideShare. The full title of this chapter is Concerning the Fact that Christians Should Not Engage in Ribaldry, Should Not Tell Fables, Should Not Jest or Guffaw. Perhaps this can also be translated as heartily laughing out loud. St. Nicodemus was an 18th century monk on Mount Athos in Greece. We can also assume that if he were alive today, that he would advise Christians to be judicious in what movies and television programs they watch. We examined his views on the commandment against false witness and slander, and jokes and pranks can be a type of slander. Unlike the Egyptian monastic writings for many centuries before, St. Nicodemus is clearly addressing both monastics and laymen, but he is clearly encouraging a monastic mindset, and his teachings on jokes and laughing will seem strict, but we can learn from them even if we do not follow them in all their severe strictness. And we explore the historical settings of this strict advice as well as a short biography in our initial video on St. Nicodemus, on the commandment do not slander. Indeed, laymen can and should read the monastic classics because living the Christian life is itself a type of monastic calling. But since laymen are not monks, you have to use common sense when applying the advice to your life situation. Some minor allegorizing is needed. And this is explored by St John Climacus in the first rung when climbing the Ladder of Divine Ascent. And this is also true for this work by St. Nicodemus. Also, the modern and medieval Greek world differ greatly. We have a much wider range of entertainment, and every weeknight you have your choice of many stand-up late-night programs. In Shakespeare's time, many clerics warned against attending the theater because of the loose morals of the actors, and some of these complaints may have been warranted. And we're not going to propose that Christians avoid all movies and television shows, though we will regard St. Nicodemus' teachings as valid warnings that these programs can pose spiritual dangers that we must be aware of and avoid. The advice of St. Nicodemus would also apply to the internet. If Christians view YouTube or TikTok or Facebook, they need to be aware that they're partially in control of what the channel feeds them. And Christians should definitely choose to tell the channel what content is objectionable to them. As Pope Francis teaches us in his encyclical Gaudete, Exsultate, we need to remind ourselves that we are responding to real people when we respond to posts on the internet, and we must respond with an attitude of Christian charity, just as we should when we talk to people in the flesh, and in particular when we respond to a post by a fellow Christian. We must also be aware that contemplative monks, ancient, medieval, and modern, train themselves to be quiet and circumspect, and when they do speak, to speak slowly and cautiously, measuring each word, striving to a measure of perfection that may be impossible for laymen who must quickly answer to bosses, co-workers, family, and their children, who by necessity need to be quicker and more assertive in their speech. And when we take this into account, St. Nicodemus' advice does make more sense. And we begin our reflections on the teachings of St. Nicodemus this way. He begins, the life of men is divided into two realms, the present and the future. The present life is a life of mourning and sorrow. The future life is a life of mirth and joy. The present life is full of afflictions and tears, while the future life is full of gladness and exultation. In our present life we sow, in our future life we reap. Our present life is filled with warfare and struggles. Our future life is a time of victory and crowns. Now we live to follow the commandments of the Lord. In the future we will receive the rewards. And we must ask the question, does this fellow have kids? If you have kids, you know they thrive in a childhood of mirth and joy. But no, St. Nicodemus was a monk. He did not have kids and was rarely around children. And this reminds me of some of my own contrasting experiences. My ex-wife grew up Baptist, so for a time we attended a Baptist church, and on Wednesday nights they had a well-attended worship service that included something called Awana, which was a kids program. And once I was asked to help out, and seeing the kids running around like crazy, I took the whistle and stopping them and scolding them, shouting out, "All of you are acting like children," to which one of them objected, "But we are children." And I conceded that was true and told them to carry on, and the bedlam continued louder than ever. Now, decades later, in contrast, I attended a contemplative Orthodox Wednesday night service, which was always poorly attended in most Orthodox churches, and nobody seems to mind. In fact, I rarely saw young children at this midweek service, and I asked about this. The priest said that if a particularly devout parent forces their kids to attend, the parents are scolded because they don't want the children detesting going to church. Sunday morning was enough for the kids. Now, I'm not condoning either practice, but the Orthodox contemplative services do require more self-discipline, and the Orthodox do not wish for church to be fun. St. Nicodemus teaches that there are three elements that characterize the life and state of a Christian: thought, speech, and deed. He quotes St. Gregory of Nyssa explaining this progression. Our thoughts are the origin of every word. Next is speech, which reveals through our voice the thoughts which we've imprinted on our soul, and our deeds are the final reflection of our thoughts. St. Nicodemus teaches us that the speech of all Christians who laugh at ribald jokes is corrupted, since they fill their speech with obscene, indecent, shameless, and meretricious words. Now, meretricious is a word that describes something that has apparent merit but lacks any value or integrity. And a more archaic definition of meretricious is that of an attractive prostitute, displaying enticing beauty on the outside, but hiding a diseased reality on the inside. And this archaic definition is apt because throughout this work, St. Nicodemus especially condemns lewd humor and dirty jokes. Likewise, regarding Christians who laugh at ribald jokes, their thought is corrupted. Just as their words are crude and lewd, so also the thoughts and ideas in their souls are crude and lewd. Speech is a mirror, image, and imprint of the thoughts and inner disposition of the heart. He who utters obscene words churn up filth, mud, and manure, which is spread first to himself and then to those who hear it. As St. John of the Ladder teaches us, just as he who wears perfume is betrayed by their pleasant smell, so he who has the Spirit of the Lord is recognized by his works and his humility. And St. Nicodemus sees a possible progression that can ensnare our soul. Often from an indecent word our mind entertains, indecent thoughts. From entertainment it gives assent, from assent it succumbs to evil deeds, and from evil deeds it develops a proclivity for sin, forming a bad habit. And bad habits descend into uncaring impenitence, which leads to despair. And from despair our soul is flung into hell and perdition. What a great fire is ignited by the small flame from a shameful tongue. And the same progression is seen in the Decalogue. First, our thoughts and attitude should be holy, and we should remember that God is the rule of our lives. We should honor our parents and those who are in authority, and we should not covet or envy, as the envy is a sin that leads to all of the sins against our neighbor. Second, our words should be holy. We should not curse God or take his name in vain, and we should not bear false witness against our neighbor or slander his reputation. And third, our deeds should be holy. We should love our neighbor as ourselves, and we shall not murder or mistreat or adulter or steal from our neighbor. St. Nicodemus teaches us, strive to become worthy of the holy name of Christians through our Christian words and your holy deeds. Can you be both a Christian and comedian, Christian and jester, and Christian and buffoon? Can you be a Christian if you study the faults of your neighbor, searching for words or deeds to ridicule for laughs? St. Basil notes that in his time on earth, the Lord experienced those emotions that arise from the flesh, and those that attest to virtue, such as weariness and pity for the afflicted. But in the Gospels, at no time did he consent to laugh, though the Scriptures records that Jesus wept 4 times. Likewise, Jesus in the Sermon on the Plain exhorts, "Blessed are you that weep now, for you shall laugh." In the matching verse, "Woe to you that laugh now, for you shall mourn and weep." St. Nicodemus challenges us. Do you hear, you who jest? Do you hear, you who laugh? Christ wept not for his own sins, but for the sins of mankind. And you not only do not bewail your sins, but laugh. St. Nicodemus expresses an extreme position. You should give up jesting, buffoonery, and laughter if you desire to be truly Christians, imitators and disciples of Jesus Christ. For if you do not give these up, you are not truly Christian, but falsely so, and you are not genuine disciples of Christ, but spurious ones. And the translators in a footnote contrast that with the discussion in Aristotle, where levity is a virtue that lies between the extremes of boorishness and buffoonery. And the translators contrast this with a Christian teaching that we should abhor levity as a vice contrary to Christian life. But St. Nicodemus then relents, teaching us that a man cannot be always downcast and dejected, but needs at times to transform his dejection into a gladsome attitude with cheerful words. Content yourselves with smiling and grinning, as prudent and judicious people do, just as the wise Sirach says. A fool lifts up his voice with laughter, but a wise man scarcely smiles a little. Christians should especially not laugh or jest in church. St. Nicodemus teaches us, when Christians enter the church, the temple of God, they should believe that they are entering heaven itself, and should offer their prayers to God with tears and sighs, seeking forgiveness of their sins. If he who prays carelessly angers and incenses God, how much more does he anger God who converses, jokes, and laughs at the time of prayer, and worse, in church? But St Nicodemus then relents, teaching us that man cannot be always downcast and dejected, but needs a time to transform his dejection into a gladsome attitude with cheerful words. Content yourself with smiling and grinning, as prudent and judicious people do. Just as the wise Sirach says, a fool lifts up his voice with laughter, but a wise man scarcely smiles a little. Now, can modern Christians tell jokes? Should we listen to the jokes of stand-up comics and late-night talk show hosts? I remember years ago I paid to be entertained by a nightclub stand-up comic that was billed as not being too offensive. But to me his lewd and cruel jokes were just too much. And I must admit that I was the most sensitive person there. I was the only person who walked out and stood in the lobby. I just couldn't bear to listen to the toxic humor. Now, among the comics, Jerry Seinfeld is most benign, as his comedy invites the audience to laugh at themselves personally and at our modern cultural norms. Can Christians tell jokes? Perhaps the best way to answer this is with another key question. What are your motives? Do you seek to harm the reputation of your neighbor, something priceless and often permanent? Or do you seek to mock the church for just fleeting laughs and chuckles? Sometimes humor and jokes can teach moral lessons, and as an example, we will retell several Catholic jokes we found on the channel Breaking the Habit. The first joke is about a nun who is a teacher in a Catholic school, and she asks her young students what they want to be when they grow up. One girl says she wants to be a prostitute. The nun hesitates and asks her again, and once again, the girl says that she wants to be a prostitute when she grows up. And the nun says, "What a relief. I thought you said you wanted to be a Protestant." And the moral lesson is that Christians should first seek how to become better Christians, not be overly concerned about whether their neighbors are true Christians and whether or not your church is a true church, and whether the Christians in our church are really the true Christians, which is a key objective of our channel. In the next joke, a Catholic goes into a bar and orders 3 beers, which he quietly drinks by himself. After a few months, the bartender is curious and asks why he does this. The Catholic explains that he had a group of friends in college, and they drank a beer in a pub every Friday night. And when they graduated, they each went their separate ways, as they were each offered jobs in different cities. But they promised to each other that each week they would each drink 3 beers in a pub to commemorate their friendship. Now, some months later, he only orders 2 beers, and after a month of only 2 beers, the bartender says he is sorry for his loss. The man is puzzled and asks what he means. The bartender sadly said, "Why, one of your friends must have passed away." The man says, "Oh no, I am Catholic, and my friends are not, and this is Lent, and I don't drink beer during Lent." And the moral lesson is that Lent should merely intensify our year-long strivings to live a virtuous life, and we will not benefit from the added discipline of Lent if it's merely a ceremonial exercise, perhaps only for show. In the next joke, 2 promiscuous boys go to confession. The first boy goes in and doesn't want to fully confess, so he only confesses to impure thoughts. But the second boy is more truthful. He confesses that he's been dallying with some of the girls in the class. The priest asks, "Is it Tiffany? You need to watch out for Tiffany. How about Stephanie? She's kind of wild. How about Melanie? You need to avoid these girls." And the 2 boys afterward compared how tough the priest was, and the first boy said he was very tough. He was instructed to pray 12 Hail Marys. And the second boy said that he was also sentenced to praying 12 Hail Marys, but he was also given 3 good leads. And the moral lessons are that if you complain about the repetitiveness and meaningless of Catholic confession, or Orthodox confession, that is not the Church's fault, nor is it the priest's. It's solely your fault. And most importantly, you can slander someone's reputation even when you're telling the truth about them. Now we'll discuss the sources we used in this video. We discussed our sources in our first video on St Nicodemus and his work on Christian morality and the video on Do Not Slander. We are also planning a reflection on St. Nicodemus' teaching on whether Christians should assent to being entertained and be involved with some of the frivolities of the world, which is really a continuation of the ancient debate of Stoicism versus Epicureanism. The YouTube description includes a link to our PowerPoint script that we uploaded to SlideShare and also our blog. Please support this channel by sharing this video with your friends and by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons and by clicking on the Amazon links to purchase any of the books we discussed, which will earn us a very small affiliate commission. And please consider becoming a patron of our channel. Plus, we will host special discussion groups for our patrons. Plus, you can click on the Meetup or small M icon to participate in our online discussions, where we practice our future YouTube scripts. And please click on the links for other videos that will broaden your knowledge and improve your soul.